Hello, my name is Sandy Adamitis, the social media director for the Page International Screenwriting Awards, and your host for the Writers Hangout, a podcast that celebrates the many stages of writing, from inspiration to the first draft, revising, getting a project made, and everything in between. We'll talk to the best and the brightest in the entertainment industry and create a space where you can hang out, learn from the pros, and have fun. Hey, writers, it's Sandy. We continue celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Page International Screenwriting Awards with Davah Avena. Davah took home the 2006 Silver Prize for Best TV Drama Pilot and has risen in television from staff writer to co-executive producer on shows like Firefly Lane and Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. Writers, let's get started. Thanks so much for joining us on the Writers Hangout.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I have a confession, Davah. I was reading up on you. I saw an article that said Davah Avena, pronounced lava. So I literally sat there and went, Avena lava. Avena lava. And I couldn't get it.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. People who know me, I'm kind of known for is whenever I go into an interview, I always start with the exact same thing, which is, hi, my name is Davah. It rhymes with lava.
There you go.
That's my thing, because when you grow up with an unusual name like Davah is, people get nervous about saying your name. And that's the last thing you want somebody to be. It's nervous when you're having a conversation with them. So I always start out, even people that should know my name, I always start that way because, and the other thing is I'm terrible with names. So when I'm introducing myself to somebody, I'm thinking about how, oh my gosh, this person's never going to remember my name, so much so that I forget their name. So I'm the worst.
I love your name, Davah.
Thank you. My mom named me after this Brazilian woman that she met while she was pregnant with me. And it turned out that she misheard the woman's name. The woman's name was Dalva, but my mom heard Davah and was like, oh, that's a pretty name.
I think it's really pretty. Now, you've worked on some excellent television shows, including Daytime Divas, Kevin Probably Saves the World, well, in Pren, probably, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, and Firefly Lane. But you started focused on features, then had what you called a beautiful mind moment. Can you talk about that time?
I never really thought I was going to have a career in writing. That it was something that I was always really good at and comfortable doing. But for some reason, for whatever reason, I never thought of it as a career. So I went to film school. I went to USC Film School, and I went for their directing program, which is directing and production. And so I did all the things there.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Really got to learn how to make films from soup to nuts. And I thought, I was going to graduate and become a film director. And so on my exit interview, like I had an exit interview with the mentor there. Brenda Goodman was my mentor. And she said, don't take this the wrong way. And I was like, oh, good. Nothing good comes after those words. But she said, but you have a TV sensibility. And I just had, this like beautiful mind moment where all the puzzle pieces like came together. And I was like, oh my God, like, yes. Oh my God, yes. Of course I should be in television, because my whole life I had been just obsessed with television, and I took it very seriously. I was dissecting TV shows and sitcoms as a kid without really even knowing that I was doing it.
Right.
I was just obsessed with television. And so when she said that, I was like, yeah, like, wow, I can't believe I didn't come up with that myself. And at the time, USC didn't have a lot of television classes, but now I know, that's changed quite a bit. And they do include a lot of television in their courses now. But So I literally went home, and I don't know if Google was invented yet or not. It was 2002. But I like to say I went home and Googled how to get into television, literally. And it said, because like, just to go back, she was like, this was the exit interview, so there was no more, learning to be had there.
Hmm.
And so I went home, Googled how to get into television, and it said, well, if you can write, writing is a great way into TV because writers have a little more influence, and, that's kind of the way in if you can write. And I was like, well, I've always enjoyed writing. I'd had the most successes when I directed the ones that I had written. So that had always had more success with those. So I was like, well, let me
Hmm.
try this. And so I just read on the internet, oh, okay, you should write a spec script. And that was, at the time, that was the thing that you should do, is write a spec script from something that was on television at the time.
Right.
And so I wrote, really just very quickly, I wrote My Wife and Kids, and I wrote a George Lopez show, just to date.
Oh,
This is when this was. Then I started submitting to the programs, and, got
the
in that.
rest is history.
Yeah.
After you decided to focus on television, you applied to the National Hispanic Media Coalition's Writers Program. First, can you tell us about the program? Then I'd love to hear about your experience and what you learned.
That was such a mouthful, the National Hispanic Media Coalition Writers Program. We call it the NHMC program.
Okay.
It's a great program. I really encourage people to look it up on the internet. At the time when I started it, I was literally the first class they ever did of this program.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
then it was, I think, 10 weeks long, but now I just looked on the internet, and I saw that it's a 7-week lab now.
Did you
And
break it?
I did. They were like, we don't need you here for 10 weeks. You've got enough of it. So now it's 7 weeks. When I did it, part of the program was to write a spec script of a show that was currently on television. But now I believe the program asks you to write your own pilot because, as you know, and I'm sure your listeners know, that is really what most people are asking for when they're looking for samples nowadays.
Yes. Yes.
So program is really wonderful because they've got two amazing mentors that help the program participants their own pilots, and then they do table reads to help them refine the pilots. And it really
Oh,
works as
that
like,
must have been a great experience, the
oh
table
yeah,
read.
it was amazing. It was the first time I had ever been in anything that was like a writer's room. So for me, it was like I had found my people when I took the program, because I was with all these other people who loved story just as much as I did, who wanted to pitch things just as much as I did. In my family, you had to speak up to be able to be heard at the dinner table. Everyone was vying for everybody's attention, so that wasn't new to me, but doing it with strangers was.
Yeah. Did you learn room rules while you were there? Because I can imagine if you've never been in a room before, you'd maybe say, "Oh, I don't believe page two, the that she would do this on page two." But as we all know, you should really have the solution before you speak up. Did that happen, or
I think that they did go through some of those rules. It very much wanted to replicate being in a room. Jeff Harris, who was the mentor at the time when I took it and is still the mentor, one of the two mentors now, was teaching us the rules without it being like, here's the rule. You know what I mean? We
yeah?
were learning by example, and he was definitely a guru for us to really sharpen
Thank,
our skills and become.
thank goodness for mentors.
Yes, yes,
And it
for
sounds
sure.
like you've had some really good mentors in your journey.
I've had some amazing people be like on my side, and I've also had to like search them out. Mentors don't often just appear and be like, let me mentor you. So you usually have to, find that person that you feel like you really mesh with and click with, and then
Right. Your first time on staff was Medium, which ran 7 seasons. It was first on NBC, and the last 2 years it went to CBS. First of all, wow, that must have been a special room. It was run by Glenn Gordon Caron, who created the iconic Moonlighting with Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis.
Oh, crazy, right?
Yeah, prayers to Bruce Willis and his family. But a couple of things. Being a new writer on a hit show is a unique experience. Do you remember how you felt that first couple of weeks?
Oh my God. I was petrified.
Oh, I would have just been numb.
I was petrified. I also like, even though I had done the NHMC program, it's such a different thing to be in the room with these talented writers who've been doing it for 20 years, some people more. And I was definitely just like a little in shock for the first couple of weeks. It was just like a learning experience. But in the grand scheme of things, I also started to realize that it was a procedural show and I am not a procedural writer. It was a big learning experience for me because it really wasn't the right show for me. And so for a first experience in the room, it was difficult.
Yeah, in
Always.
procedural, there's definitely a formula in all the acts. Did you feel constrained? Like you can't even give certain characters maybe lines you've liked because you've got 2 stars in it. So you have to write to just them. Is that the type of thing when you were saying procedurals aren't your thing?
I just think God bless somebody who can do both. But I think that there are people who uh, can pitch procedurals and then there are people who are more serialized. And though that's what I realized, the big learning experience out of that job for me was like, oh, I really do enjoy and love writing more serialized type of shows.
Right.
And that's been my guiding focus from then on after that show. When I had opportunities to go on to serial shows, serial shows, I kind of just know that's not my forte. I should and want to stick to the serialized world.
You know what? We should step back a moment. Do you mind explaining the difference between procedurals and serials to our listeners out there who might just, they watch TV, but they don't know all the terms?
Sure. So a procedural is a show like Law and Order or Medium, or they're very often police dramas or law dramas where the story has a beginning, middle, and end for each episode. And so you can come into them having never seen the show before and know exactly what's going on. Or you've seen one show before, you don't need a big explanation to understand what's going on.
Right.
And a serialized show is something where you kind of need to know that, for example, something like This Is Us, the dad's dead and everyone's processing the grief. And there's a lot. You can't just, step in, catch one episode and know everything and know all the nuance of what's going on.
Right. What did you learn from Glenn Gordon Caron that you've carried with you today?
Well, I would say that the thing that Glenn really stressed in his rooms would be that you had to have 5 just drop dead act breaks. And, there's so many people on streaming now, so many shows. Some people use act breaks, some people don't. But I feel like the art of the act break has been diminished in the past 15 years because it used
You
to
are
be
so right.
yeah, Glenn was a stickler for, if you had 4 great act breaks, but then, you couldn't get the 5th one, we'd keep on working until we got it, and so I really appreciated that about him.
That's a
And
really, really good learning experience. You're learning, how to keep the audience between the commercials, and that still exists even without commercials. So you have that
right.
built into your DNA. That's
Yeah.
great.
But with streaming now, a lot of people don't write to act breaks anymore, which I think there's some great parts about that. And then, there's pros and cons, I think, to
It
it.
started to stretch to character act breaks. That's what I would hear.
Mhm.
Like before, it would have to be a definitely pushing the plot forward. And now I hear you can go out on, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Like
Right.
your lead character pleading, or am I
I
making
mean,
that up in my
I
mind?
think that there's some streaming shows that don't have act breaks at all in their shows. They just have
Mm,
one long script.
yeah,
So that's definitely just like a new way of writing and telling stories.
right. Now,
In the beginning, back when it was network and only network, and cable, there were still commercials. You had to write the amazing act breaks, and so that's changed
yeah.
quite a
Now, say I'm a writer and I'm going to my first staffing meeting
bit.
and
Mhm.
I haven't watched the television show.
Right.
How am I supposed to prepare, especially if it's run a very, very long time? Shouldn't I say up front in that meeting on and get honesty points?
Well, I how shall I say this? You should watch as much of the show as you can. So let's say it's been on for 20 years, like a Law and Order or something,
Yeah.
or even 5 seasons, that would be like a lot to watch. But if you have a couple days, I would watch as much as you can. If at the minimum, the last season of the last season, that's available, just so that you
Oh, good
can
tip.
do it.
Good tip.
If literally the meeting is tomorrow, I would spend all night watching that last season just so that I can speak to it. And if it's a show that is in the genre that you want to work in, then I'm surprised that you haven't seen some of those shows, because it's your job to try to keep abreast of, and I know the TV landscape is huge right now, but if you're trying to get on a show, you should know the show.
Yes. Good
And
answer.
and I also, as advice to writers, remember that the people who work on shows are proud of the show that they make. You would be surprised that some people go in and kind of say, "Well, I wouldn't have done it this way," or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
Even the executives, because what maybe some of your listeners don't know is when you go up for a job, a TV job, you not only have to be interviewed by the showrunner, but you also have to be interviewed by the executive for the network, the executive for the studio, sometimes production companies. You like multiple people have to okay you, and all of those people are super proud of what they're putting out. So, find something to like about it. Genuinely find something to like about it and be a fan, because these people work really hard on that
Yes.
thing that you just sat down in front of your TV or computer and watched while folding laundry. You know what I mean? Like, they worked
Yeah.
really hard.
That's really good advice, and that is really important to highlight. The people on the show really do care.
They
Yeah.
really do.
You said in an interview with the creative screenwriting website, when I'm telling a story, I need to be able to relate to it. I don't have to experience it personally, but I need to relate on some level. How do you do that? Say it's a coal miner story. How do you do that? And they want to shut down the coal mine because of the hazard conditions. And
Right.
we see it from the point of view of the young boy joining his father?
Well, to me, I would consider that like the family business, son joining his father and what it means to be in the footsteps of your father. And if you can't follow your father's footsteps because they're closing the mind, then what are you? Like what, that's a question of identity. Like I would go deep into what the characters are actually feeling and say, well, how can I relate to that? Like, okay, well, personally, I grew up in a family with two entrepreneurs. Both my parents were entrepreneurs, so I grew up working in the family business. And
Mm.
in my family became like my brothers and sisters all became business people because we all from a very young age were working in the business, and I was the only one who didn't go the into business. Having said that, as a kid, I was like, "Oh, being an entrepreneur." I'm doing a tangent. I'll stop. Um,
Oh,
but
no, I was leaning in. I was
oh,
fascinated. It was like magic. We just saw magic on this podcast. That was beautiful.
well, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like that. Well, that was just like off the cuff, and you surprised
Yes.
me with that scenario. But that is what you have to do. I'm not a man. I don't have experience with coal mining, none of those things. But what on a personal human level can you as a writer connect with? Because if you only stuck to writing the things that you have personally done in your life, then that's going to limit your ability to tell stories.
I once had a canary, that won't help. Were you always comfortable pitching in the room?
I'm still not comfortable pitching. Every job that I have, I say this to my husband, like the first 2 months, I think, "Oh, the showrunner hates all my pitches. What am I doing?" Like I still have all of those feelings, but it takes me a while to feel comfortable in a room before I start pitching. And that lead up time or, time that it takes me to get comfortable is getting smaller and smaller each time I take a job.
Right,
But
because you're the co-executive producer now, so the, story editor, staff writers, they get to be quiet at first,
right.
and you're the focus is on you and number
Exactly.
1. Yeah,
At this point, I'm helping run the room and I'm helping guide the room
right.
with the story. When the showrunner's not in the room, I'm, leading the room and trying to stay on task and stuff like that. So, but to truly pitch, what I think is the important thing of pitching, and what I've found is um, the key to my most successful pitches is when I truly take from my own personal life and get a little vulnerable with the people in the
Mm.
writer's room. Those are the pitches that usually lead to something big and something, again, the other writers, because those vulnerable things are human things, the other writers will jump on that. And then that creates a great story and they add their parts to that and how they experienced the same thing or didn't experience it. And then now you've got the whole room excited about an idea, and
That's
it takes a little
great.
while before you want to spill your guts to people, you know?
Mhm.
So it really depends on the room. I've been in rooms where I immediately felt comfortable with people and then other rooms where it took me months.
What's your stance on script coordinators and writers' assistants pitching?
I think that's great. I don't have a big answer. I mean, I was a writer's assistant. I was a writer's assistant on the show Kyle XY for ABC Family.
Right, I remember that, yes.
And my bosses were Eric Tuckman, who's on Handmaid's Tale, and Julie Plec, who is, of course, huge with Vampire Diaries and all of her mega shows, all of those very successful career. And they were very open to be mentoring me and allowing me to pitch in the room. And I think, of course, you should let the writers' assistants and script coordinators pitch. Here's the thing is that usually those people are emerging writers and maybe don't have as much experience in the room. And so they may not choose the best time to jump in.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just have to be laser focused with, I would say, read the room, watch the room for a while before you jump in to see like who's the most open to hearing pitches, when's a good time and when's not.
Great.
To
That is
pitch.
great advice. Yeah, definitely watch the room.
Mhm.
Are there any tips or tricks, or don't ever do this for writers who are going on their first general or a first staffing meeting?
Well, I think generals and staffing, they're similar, but I would probably give different advice. I'll come up with something for both. So for a general, I think that it's a misconception that it's an interview. It's not an interview. It's a getting to know you so that in a year or 2 years, something comes up. It could be next week. Something comes across their desk and they think of you. The thing that you need to do when you go into those meetings is have your story down and be ready to talk about it and share about it. And so when they leave that meeting, they can say, let's say, Sandy, you grew up in a family of firefighters and
Okay.
something might come up. You want to make sure that you tell them about that and any other fun, interesting things that make you different than everybody else that they saw today. Because executives, a lot of their day is spent having these general meetings. And so how are you going to stand out, from
Right.
all the other people,
And my
You're-
grandfather and uncle were a fireman. So
Oh,
there you
really?
go.
Okay.
I would
Well,
have led with that.
I was going to say your dad was a coal miner. Um, but you have to, so if that were the case, I would say, yeah, I grew up in this family and how does it relate back to you? Like,
Yes.
that's what my grandfather did and my father did, but this is how it affected me.
Right.
And so that's what you want, hopefully they're already having a meeting with you because they liked your sample. So you're not having to prove anything to them.
Mhm.
You're just getting to know them so that in the future, if something comes across their desk, they might go, oh, yeah, remember when we had that meeting with Sandy and she told that really funny story about blah, blah, blah.
About dying in the coal mine.
About dying in the coal mine and the canary. But
Right.
so that would be my thought on generals.
Yeah.
In a showrunner meeting, I think is slightly different because there are some people who think you should pitch story ideas to the showrunner and some people who don't think that is right. And I come down on the don't pitch story ideas to the showrunner because you really don't know everything that is behind the scenes of why we don't do stories. So people come in and pitch the story about this side character or something. And what you don't know is we don't use that character that much because they can't really hold a whole storyline or whatever. Like there's so much behind
Oh,
the
good
scenes that you
point.
don't know. So, but what I do advise people to do is to tell a story from your own life that the showrunner can see how it would relate to their show so that you appear to be somebody who has a lot of stories and is willing to share them. Because when you're in the writer's room, sometimes there's just like, nobody has the answer to this question, or you're like, what are we going to do for the next episode? And it helps when somebody's like, oh, this funny thing happened to me once when blah, 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 blah. And it's not that you do that exact story, but you mine the gem, you mine the diamond out of that story. And now you're back on track and everyone's excited about what the episode's going to be. So, for example, I wanted to be on Desperate Housewives so badly, and I never got on that show. But then the same creator, Mark Cherry, created a show called Devious Maids.
Yes.
And I wanted to be on Devious Maids, episode 1 or season 1, season 2, didn't get in. And then in season 3, I had got an opportunity to interview with the showrunner who had taken over when Mark Cherry had stepped back. And so I had this meeting, and in the meeting, I told the story about my cousin who had this outrageous story about how she had been a nanny, and then she had an illicit affair, and then that turned into a marriage that turned into this really amazing story. I don't want to get into, probably should get to the details, but it turns into this really hilarious story where she makes a big scene in front of a bunch of people. It just showed the showrunner, oh, here's somebody who has great stories. Yes, she was a nanny and not a maid, but it's in the world.
Correct.
And I think that that's what made that showrunner meeting for me, because I was somebody who was willing to share stories from my life that could have been straight out of the show, but I wasn't actually pitching that this specific character did this.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a showrunner, you're hearing a story through the lens of your show. So you're constantly, I didn't have to say it, he was already doing it. Oh, this character would have done the exact same thing.
I really like what you just said. The showrunner is hearing the story through the lens of the show. That really sums it up perfectly of how you just take your particular story and why you should tell it.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
The job of a showrunner is so all encompassing that there is not a moment in the day where they're not like, how can I use this for the show?
Right.
Every story you tell, they're processing it and saying, I could use that kernel of that story for my show.
Again, working for showrunner for Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, one of the staff writers got on because he played chess. And Josh Friedman knew that he was the Turk, which was a machine how to play chess, might have been the first foray into the robots taking over. So Ian Goldberg was the writer's name, played chess, and he got to be on staff. He understood.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So
I've never been a showrunner, but I'm told that the showrunners are looking to populate the room with people who can add that specificity that they can't know everything, the showrunner, and
Right.
so you need those people in the room. If you just staff it with a bunch of people exactly like you, then you don't have that specificity that really adds to any show.
Right. Now, you have a saying that you like. Can you share that with us?
Yes. Well, it's in Spanish. It really helps because in this industry, it often feels like you're maybe going up against your friends for the same job, or you feel like "Ugh, everyone's getting the opportunities that I want to have, and why not me?" and all this. And so there's a saying in Spanish that says, "Lo que es para ti, nadie te lo quita," and which means what's yours, nobody can take away from you. And so I have tried to remember that in my career, that there have been disappointments where I wish I had gotten shows and other things like that. And in the end, I just have to say that there was a reason why I didn't get that show, and on to the next thing.
Yes. I
I'm
love
excited.
that. Such a beautiful saying.
Thank you.
Starting out, what was your biggest misconception about being a working writer?
Ooh. Sandy, I didn't know what being a working writer was. It's weird to say, but I didn't have any misconceptions because at that time in the early aughts, there wasn't all of this information that there is now on the internet about what writers' rooms are like.
Podcasts on writing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
On writing. I mean, they just didn't exist. So I
Yes, there
didn't
was
have
so much info out there.
I think I had some kind of idealized version. I'm trying to think of a famous writer from television that's like, I don't know,
I
like
think growing up, we always saw a study was involved, a roaring fireplace, and frustration. There.
yeah, I'm trying to think of a TV show that has a writer that I would have had. I mean, oftentimes writers write about writers. So I know there's a million, but I'm like, Desi Arnaz in the
Oh,
It Was
right.
Lucy. You know what I mean? It always looked so much fun. Like I wanted to be those people who got to do
The Trop. Uh,
the Tropicana. Yeah, no,
there. You're right. Now that I think about it, that is my first time introduced to the background of the entertainment industry. You have
right. And
landed on something brilliant.
I know that there are definitely, I feel like, another show that was
Oh, wait,
about
look what we're forgetting.
what?
Um, Carl Reiner, Dick Van Dyke.
Yes, the Dick Van Dyke Show. I
The
was gonna say that, but I couldn't remember if it was a TV. It was a writer's room, wasn't it?
Yes, I was mad because Sally always typed, and I didn't think that was fair. Maury Amsterdam talked, and
Right.
Dick talked, and,
Right.
she came up with jokes, but she was the typist. She sat there with an Underwood, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for answering all those questions with such brilliant advice. But before you go, would you like to do a pop quiz?
Oh, I love it. Please do.
Okay. Now, this is something we called You Wrote the Show, but do you remember the show?
Oh no.
Yep. And we're going to do a quick quiz on a little something you wrote on a television show called Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist,
Uh-huh.
Season 1, Episode 7,
Uh-huh.
Zoe's Extraordinary Confession, written
Yes.
by Davah Avena.
Hey, I
One,
remember it. Yes.
okay, 1 point per question. Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist was about a young woman who discovers that she has the ability to hear the innermost thoughts of people around her as songs and musical numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, first question. At the top of the episode, Zoe and Max are doing something they haven't done in a while. What is it?
They're going to get lunch.
I'm sorry, that's wrong.
Oh my God.
They're doing movie night.
Oh yes. No, I'm thinking of the big musical
Yep.
number. Yes.
Don't worry, we'll get there.
Okay.
When Zoe is fighting with her brother,
You ever had anybody get all of the answers wrong?
no.
Okay.
No.
This might be a first.
When Zoe is fighting with her brother, what song does Mary Steenburgen, Maggie, her character's name, Zoe's mom, sing?
Oh, it's an Elvis song, and it's a little less, a little
What we're
less
doing right now.
vamping. Let's lost conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll give you a 1 point there.
Oh my God.
All right. What body part of Tobin, who's played by Kapil Talwalkar, he had to have something amputated because he was playing a video game too long. What was it? What body part?
I feel like it was like a pinky toe.
You're close.
Um,
I'm going to give that to you. It was his baby toe.
what big isn't pinky toe the same thing as baby toe?
Oh, you're right. They are the same thing. Okay. All right, I'm going to edit that out that I don't sound so stupid. Okay.
No, but baby toe feels better.
Yes, and that was your line, baby toe, and it was 2/3 of the baby toe, which made it even funnier. What is the new technology that Joan, played by Lauren Graham, who we love, and Leaf, played by Michael Thomas Grant, called?
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a difficult question because in the room, it was called something else for a really long time. And it wasn't until we like went into production that because of copyright. So I want to say, is it called The Chirp?
Yes.
Okay.
You're doing great, by the way.
Thank you. Oh my God.
Tobin and Leaf are celebrating what in this episode?
Their friendship anniversary.
Kinda.
Oh, but wait, sorry. It was it was the spelling bee.
The Spellaversary.
The Spellaversary. Yes.
Okay. That was so cute, the Spellaversary.
Let me just say something about that episode.
Oh,
It
go
is
ahead.
so rare to get to see like true bromance, two men get to be friends. I was really excited to get to write that episode. And so that was really cool.
Where did Max and Zoe go to lunch?
Well, they went to the mall. Is that?
Yes. The food court.
Yeah, food court, yes.
Yeah, I'll give you that. 7. What song does Max sing during lunch in the courtyard?
Oh my God. I can see it happening. It's amazing. It's a flash mob. It is coming to me. It was, give me a hint. Give me a hint.
I was just thinking, oh, I have to give her a hint. And the singer, he's just one of the younger singers.
He was going out with Camila Cabello, right? Shawn Mendes. If I can, have you? Have you? Am I going
You got it.
This is another example of things like in the room, you have a million different songs that you pitch, and then it comes down to like, oh, what song can we get for the episode? So sometimes you have to change it on the fly. I'm trying to remember what song was the original song that we had pitched for that, but then the actor who played Max Skyler, Aston, had a great idea of using a Shawn Mendes song, and so we used that.
Oh.
Can't remember what was the original pitch, but.
And for the actor, that must have been cool to be able to dance and sing to a song that you wanted. That's cool.
Yeah.
They didn't do that on Glee. They were very tough.
Oh,
no, I'm just kidding. I have no idea. Joan, this was my favorite joke in the whole episode. And if you blinked, you could have missed it. Joan confesses to Charlie that she bought a ranch to go with what? She bought a ranch that went with what?
I can't remember if it was her boots or her riding pants or something like that.
Her riding pants.
Her riding pants, yeah.
I'm still laughing. Okay. And again, you could have said boots and I would have chuckled, but riding pants was
the winner.
So visual. What does Zoe listen to calm herself down?
Ooh. Is it only in this episode, or is this like it
might have been a throwaway. She was sitting in a chair. She was hiding from Max, and he finds her, and he pulls her, and she says, "Oh, I'm just chilling." And
murder podcasts.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah.
What song does Tobin sing to Leaf?
Oh, this was Don't Speak.
Yes.
That we went around and around and around and around and around about which song it was going to be.
Perfect song, and I also just love that song.
I know. I love that song too. That's why I pushed for it. Like I was really pushing. That was like my favorite. But we talked about so many songs, like Dionne Warwick, That's What Friends Are For. And it was he felt abandoned, so it couldn't be like an uplifting song.
Right. What does the male caretaker put in Zoe's dad's chocolate shake?
Spinach.
Yes.
I always loved that part because he really was caring for him.
Oh yeah, I love that. Last question. Zoe witnessed Joan and Leaf working late. What song is sung?
That's a great moment.
Could
I don't know that one.
I'll put a spell on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I must say, did amazing.
I was really worried I wasn't gonna get one. After I got one, I felt like all of the pressure went away.
You, out of 12 questions, you missed only 2. I think you are
Wow.
the reigning queen of the quiz.
No.
Yeah, you are. Yes.
Oh my
I'm
god.
pretty secure in saying that. You've spent so much time with us. You have given us so many great pieces of advice. I really, really, really appreciate you spending time with us.
I love talking about writing, about other writers, about the business of writing, and so it's something I really enjoy talking about, and thank you for asking such great questions. I had fun.
That's a wrap for the Writers Hangout. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, like, and thrive. Till we get to hang out again, keep writing. The world needs your stories. The Writers Hangout is sponsored by the Page International Screenwriting Awards. Executive producer, Kristen O'Verne. Producers, Terry Sampson and Sandy Adamitis. Music by Ethan Stoller.